The 5 Songs of King Wulfharth. Shore's Tongue. The first song of King Wulfharth is ancient, circa 1 era 500. After the defeat of the Elysian army at Glenumbria Moors, where King Hogg Merkiller was slain, Wulfharth of Atmora was elected by the Pact of Chieftains. His Thu'um was so powerful that he could not verbally swear into the office, and scribes were used to draw up his oaths. Immediately thereafter, the scribes wrote down the very first new law of his reign, a fiery reinstatement of the traditional Nordic pantheon. The edicts were outlawed, their priests put to the stake, and their halls were set ablaze. The shadow of King Borgas had ended for a span. For his zealotry, King Wulfharth was called Shore's Tongue, and Ysmir, Dragon of the North. Kind Son. The second song of King Wulfharth glorifies his deeds in the eyes of the old gods. He fights the eastern orcs and shouts their chief into hell. He rebuilds the 418th step of High Hrothgar, which had been damaged by a dragon. When he swallowed a thundercloud to keep his army from catching cold, the Nords called him the Breath of Kine. Old Knocker. The third song of King Wulfharth tells of his death. Orki, enemy god, had always tried to ruin the Nords, even in Atmora where he stole their years away. Seeing the strength of King Wulfharth, Orki summoned the ghost of Alduin Time Eater again. Nearly every Nord was eaten down to 6 years old. Boy Wulfharth pleaded to Shore, the dead chieftain of the gods, to help his people. Shore's own ghost then fought the Time Eater on the spirit plane, as he did at the beginning of time. And he won, and Orki's folk, the orcs, were ruined. As boy Wulfharth watched the battle in the sky, he learned a new Thu'um. What happens when you shake the dragon just so? He used this new magic to change his people back to normal. In his haste to save so many, though, he shook too many years out on himself. He grew older than the greybeards, and died. The flames of his pyre were said to have reached the hearth of Kine herself. The Ash King. The fourth song of King Wulfharth tells of his rebirth. The dwarves and devils of the eastern kingdoms had started to fight again, and the Nords hoped they might reclaim their ancient holdings there because of it. They planned an attack, but then they gave up, knowing that they had no strong king to lead them. Then in walked the devil of Dagoth, who swore he came in peace. Moreover, he had told the Nords a wondrous thing. He knew where the heart of Shore was. Long ago, the chief of the gods had been killed by elven giants, and they ripped out Shore's heart and used it as a standard to strike fear into the Nords. This worked until Ysgramor shouted some sense and the Nords fought back again. Knowing that they were going to lose eventually, the elven giants hid the heart of Shore so that the Nords might never have their god back. But here was the devil of Dagoth with good news. The dwarves and devils of the Eastern Kingdom had his heart, and this was the reason for their recent unrest. The Nords asked the devil of Dagoth why he might betray his countrymen so, and he said that the devils have betrayed each other since the beginning of time, and this was so, and so the Nords believed him. The tongues sung Shore's ghost into the world again. Shore gathered an army, as he did of old, and then he sucked in the long-strewn ashes of King Wulfharth and remade him, for he needed a good general. But the devil of Dagoth petitioned to be that general too, and he pointed out his role as the blessed harbinger of this holy war. So Shore had 2 generals, the Ash King and the devil of Dagoth, and he marched on with the eastern kingdoms, with all the sons of Skyrim. Red Mountain. The fifth song of King Wulfharth is sad. The survivors of the disaster came back under a red sky. That year is called Sun's Death. The devil of Dagoth had tricked the Nords, for the heart of Shor was not in the eastern kingdoms, and had never been there at all. As soon as Shor's army had got into Red Mountain, all the devils and dwarves fell upon them. Their sorcerers lifted the mountain and threw it onto Shor, trapping him underneath Red Mountain until the end of time. They slaughtered the sons of Skyrim, but not before King Wulfharth killed King Dumalakath the dwarf orc and doomed his people. Then Vek the devil blasted the Ash King into hell, and it was over. Later, Kain lifted the ashes of Ysmir into the sky, saving him from hell and showing her sons the color of blood when it is brought by betrayal, and the Nords will never trust another devil again. The Secret Song of Wulfharth, Ash King. The Truth at Red Mountain. The heart of Shor was in Resdain, as the devil of Dagoth had promised. As Shor's army approached the westernmost bank of the inner sea, they stared across at Red Mountain, where the dwarven armies had gathered. News from the scouts reported that the devil's forces had just left Narcissus, and that they were taking their time in joining their cousins against the Nords. The devil of Dagoth said that the tribunal had betrayed their king's trust, that they had sent out the devil to Lorcan, for that is what they call Shor in Resdain, so that the god might wreak vengeance on the dwarves for their hubris. That Nerevar's peace with the dwarves would be the ruin of the Velothi way. This was the reason for the slow muster, devil of Dagoth said. The armies grow, and Lorcan said, I do not wreak vengeance on the dwarves for the reasons that the tribunal might believe I do. Nevertheless, it is true that they will die by my hand, and any whoever should side with them. This Nerevar is the son of Boethia, one of the strongest Padomaics. He is a hero to his people, despite his tribunal, and he shall muster enough that this battle will be harder going still. We will need more than what we have. And so, the devil of Dagoth, who wanted the dwarves dead as the tribunal did, went to Kolgaran and summoned his house Capdil, his Nixhounds, his wizards, archers, and stolen men of brass. And the Ash King, Wulfharth, hoary Ysmir, went and made peace with the orcs, in spite of his Nordic blood, and they brought many warriors, but no wizards at all. Many Nords could not bring themselves to ally with their traditional enemies, even in the face of Red Mountain. They were close to desertion. Then Wulfharth said, Don't you see where you really are? Don't you know who Shor really is? And don't you know what this war is? And they looked from the king to the god to the devils and orcs, and some knew, really knew, and they are the ones that stayed. The Doom Drum. Nerevar carried Keening, a dagger made of the sound of the shadows of the moons. His champions were Dumak dwarf-king, who carried a hammer of divine mass, and Alandro Sul, who was the immortal son of Azura and wore the Wraith Mail. Here they met Shor at the last battle of Red Mountain. Shor had his heart again, but he had long been from it, and he needed time. Wulfharth met Sul, but could not strike him, and he fell from grievous wounds, but not before shouting Sul blind. The devil met Dumak and slew him, but not before Sundar struck his lord's heart. Nerevar turned away from Shor and struck down the devil in rage, but he took a mortal wound from Shor in turn. Nervar feigned the death that was coming early, and so struck shore with surprise on his side. The heart had been made solid by Sunder's tuning blow, and Keening could now cut it. And it was cut out, and Shore was defeated, and the whole ordeal was thought over.
Yes?